This is the IFoughtTheLaw.info podcast on People's United Radio. Because the people united can never be divided. In the face of an ever-growing array of injustice and unconstitutional practices in the criminal justice system, we the people have a responsibility to push back and make our voices heard. Governments should fear the people, not the other way around. IFoughtTheLaw.info and People's Radio United are completely independent, crowd-funded platforms that exist to push back against the propaganda machine of a legal system that exploits more than it protects. IFoughtTheLaw.info is neither right, left, or center on the political spectrum. IFoughtTheLaw.info is only interested in fighting injustice by the U.S. government, which we feel manifests in different ways under different political ideologies. And now, here is your host Steve Shagwell and producer Tim Bestbuds.
And welcome once again to the IFoughtTheLaw.info podcast. I am Steve Shagwell. Tim Bestbuds, our producer, is running the controls and doing whatever cool technical stuff he does. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
and we have a great show today. As people who have been listening know, I am trying to create a solutions-oriented podcast where we talk about more than just the fact that there's a problem with police brutality and cops are out here doing this and doing that and that sort of thing, trying to get into why exactly and then come up with solutions. I mean, some of them are going to be ways that we will be, pushing for reform and accountability, but other ways might actually involve support that officers aren't getting. And I think we might touch on some of that today with today's guest. Today's guest is very fascinating because he is a former LAPD officer who went bad, and he's going to tell his story of how that happened to him. And having been on the inside and having had an opportunity to see a lot of officers go bad, he's going to be able to shed some light on this. So I'm very excited to have him here today. His name is Alex Salazar. Alex, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Steve? Hi, Tim. How are you guys?
We're fantastic, and it's great to have you on here. So,
hi, Alex.
Normally this would involve me coming in with a prepared list of questions because I did research, and I tried to do research, and I found something very surprising, that on the topic of cops going bad, there's really nothing out there. There is a guy who wrote a book on it, but I didn't have time to order that book and look at it. And the few articles that are out there kind of talk about how cops go corrupt. They, get involved in selling drugs or whatever. There's really nothing talking about why are there police who are assaulting people, who are in some rare cases committing rape, and why is this happening? There's just nothing about it. So I'm afraid I have no questions really, but I know you have a lot of insight. So you're going to be leading this conversation today, Alex. And I'll just let you start by talking about your background and your story in law enforcement and how you went bad, and we can start there.
Okay, sounds good. And I just want to preface this that, I'm not against the police. What I am against is I'm against police brutality. I want to thank you, Steve, for providing this platform, because we do need to find out solutions. This is a subject matter which very rarely, if ever, gets discussed about. Why do police go bad? Why isn't this issue of PTSD brought forth for it to become a talking point and to deal with the societal issue which is on the national forefront? Okay, so to begin with, my name is Alex Salazar. I'm originally from Los Angeles. In fact, I do work out here in this area as a private investigator. I joined the LAPD in 1989. I was very idealistic at the time. I had that mindset of I was going to save the world and help everyone and be one of the good guys. And so going through the academy, I received this very top of the class, world class training in law enforcement to learn the LAPD way. And it was at the time of Daryl Gates, one who became extremely infamous too within the black community for many high-profile incidents that took place, particularly the incident of Rodney King. And that was in that graduated from the police academy. I had approximately 2 years. I had been assigned to the Rampart district and had seen much questionable behavior on behalf of our nation's most famous law enforcement agency, the LAPD, which had been featured in Adam 12, Dragnet. LAPD always comes out. Lethal Weapon. I mean, it's a world-renowned department, and back then LAPD was on top of the world for its badge, for its uniform, and most of all for its supposed supremacy. And at that time when Rodney King happened, I had been on the streets for approximately just, I would say, 2 years. I had left Rampart and had began working in the Wilshire Division, which it covers all the way to the West End, bordering Beverly Hills, and then on the south side we had South Central, right where the 10 freeway was, or is, and then we have on the east side Rampart Division, which was one division over which I had worked under at the previous year. So taking in all these things, I tried to be a good guy and to have that positive mentality, but working in an environment where you were responding to radio calls of shots fired, domestic violence calls and things like that, you tried to see the best of whatever it was that was happening and to try not to take the work personally. But yet, I mean, how can you not take personally a woman dying in your arms, bleeding to death because she's been shot, caught in a crossfire by gangbangers, her kids are wailing, and I'm soaking, bloody, with blood, in seeing such a thing, and so it affects you. And so this is not something that has not been known. It's been long known. However, in not trying to address the issue of how the mind is affected has now become a very important subject, okay, for us to try to understand, because how far do these minds go? How bad can PTSD cause someone to react or overreact with a situation? And so with me, I've been doing now, I would say, 17 years as a private investigator since I left the LAPD, trying to find myself doing cases on a national level, and also here in the state of California, many high-profile cases involving police brutality. I work very closely with the families whose loved ones have lost someone due to police brutality. I've been called a snitch. I've been called a rat. I've been called an informant, all kinds of things. And so, and that's from our side, supposedly, the people that are trying to fight for justice. And then, of course, the police don't trust me at all because, I've changed, supposedly, right? But I'm just here now to talk about this subject matter, to come out and say, how does a good cop become a bad cop? I actually wrote an article about that many years ago in trying to link together the PTSD with much of the corruption scandal that was going on with LAPD at the time. I had become very immersed into that environment. I had left the department under a situation where I had a domestic incident with my then ex. She wasn't assaulted or beaten or anything like that. It was just something where, because I was having a PTSD moment, acting explosive, acting like an asshole, that it caused a police response. And so this was the final outcome of me leaving, because my mind had become so scrambled as a result of me getting my ass kicked. And to just go into it a little bit, because I'm always repeating the story, but if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about me, you can go to renegadepopo.com. I say again, renegadepopo.com. I am the Renegade Popo. And not that I'm trying to put on a title or anything like that.
Right.
It's just that I'm trying to say things as they really are. And if that's renegade, well, that's absolutely fucking fine with me. Okay, because we need to be renegade in trying to change much of this, Nazi mentality, for lack of better words, that is starting to come out more and more now. And so I guess I can go more into myself, but I really want to answer your questions. And if anyone wants to learn any more about me, they can do that. They can go to the website. We also have honestpolice.org. And again, I just want to say thank you to you, Steve, and to Tim for providing this platform to answer these very difficult questions and to help people understand what's going on here. And if I can offer a little bit of insight into the sociopathic mentality, well, then I'm very happy to do so.
Fantastic. That's great. So what we have here is you basically went bad because of PTSD. You had you had a very traumatic incident, and at that point, that was when you really started to change, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Okay. Does this happen to officers a lot? I mean, there's some crazy stuff that goes on out there. Would you, like, if you were to say what portion of law enforcement officers in a city like LA or something are suffering from PTSD and walking around with a gun while they have PTSD?
Well, my good friend Alan Cates, who wrote the book Cop Shock, copshock.com, back in the year 2000 or 1999, give or take, I was trying to figure out what was happening, what was going on with me. I didn't know that when I left the police department, I was suffering from post-traumatic stress because, don't you know, my shrink never told me that I had it. And so one day the internet had just kind of come in. I got me one of those tower computers, a new one, with the Prodigy, sign in and the dial up, I would go, make that noise, that screeching sound. And so One of the first things I punched in at that moment into, I don't know, who was it? I think it was, no, not AOL, but it was some search engine. And I punched in police stress. And when I punched in police stress into the computer, there it popped up, PTSD. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I began to look at the symptoms of hypervigilance, people just jumping and you get close to them and they want to hit you and they become aggressive. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Okay. And then I began reading about the nightmares and attacking. One of the things that happened to me months after I got ran over in 1991 in that incident where I got attacked by these 6 gangbangers was that I started attacking my wife in my sleep. And luckily, she was smart enough to start hitting me in the face. And so I was like, what the heck, and then I began drinking to try to medicate my pain, the mental things that were going on in my mind. I was trying to medicate on that, the alcohol. After 2 or 3 months, I came back to work, and that's when my partners began kind of making fun of me, because I was in crutches and later on walking with a cane. The car had ran over my right leg, and I guess if I should talk about the incident, I was supposed to go that day in 1991 to a wedding for my then wife. Her best friend was getting married, and I was in downtown trying to get a suit to wear to the wedding, and basically I saw a woman walking down the street with her little 6-year-old girl. She was like in her early 30s, a young Latina female, and I see this young man, this person that identified as a gang member, assaulting her and beating her and taking a gold chain off her neck. And so I was thinking to myself, oh, great, I got to go to this wedding. I don't have time for this, right? And then I don't know what happened. I hit the gas and I sped past this guy as he's running southbound on Broadway in downtown Los Angeles. This is at 8th and Broadway, downtown LA, the epicenter of Los Angeles with all its skyscrapers, and 12 o'clock noon on a Saturday, and this is happening, these events that would later shape my whole existence even up until now. And so I catch this guy, I park my car to the side, and I tell him I'm the police, and he says I didn't do anything. He's screaming over and over and again, no hice nada, no hice nada. And at this time, the woman that he had just robbed comes running up and tells me he just robbed me. I said, I know, I saw him, and here's the chain. And then the guy starts screaming again, no hice nada, no hice nada. And then I told the woman, go call the police, go call 911 to give me some backup. Because in those days, I didn't carry a radio. There was no cell phones. We had beepers then. That was the age of the beepers. I don't know if you remember that age, Steve, but that was way back in the
Yep.
day, to say, and so and I had my 2-inch little revolver in my right front pants pocket. That was all I had. My little gun, it was a 5-shooter backup, and so there I am with this guy. When all of a sudden, 6 hardcore vatos show up and they start asking me who I am, what I'm doing, and for me to show them my badge. And I told them, I ain't going to show you my stinking badge. I mean, I didn't say it like that, of course, but I ain't showing you my badges. I made it very clear using some pretty bad profanity to try to scare the shit out of them. But it didn't work because the guy that I was holding on to takes off running, and he takes the chain back away from me. Okay, can you believe that? Takes off running into the middle of the street at 8th and Broadway, and here I am. I start to go after him. But no sooner do I get to like the middle of the street that I hear the sound of breaking glass. These guys are breaking the windows of my brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse. They're kicking in the doors and they're saying, "Come on, motherfucker!" And I'm like, "Oh shit!" And so I went straight to my car. I let the guy go that I had been chasing, and I reached into my car. I got out a baton and I tried to protect myself. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I had to do something. Prior to this happening, as it all is going on, things are just starting to really slow down. It's almost unbelievable, surreal. I can remember still in slow motion those seconds before my life changed forever. What was happening? All of a sudden, people were stopped and they were watching what was going on. A little old lady, as I got backed up into the middle of the street, the gangbangers kept on coming after me. And at that point, when I crossed in the street, I pulled one of those jobs there where this guy in Anaheim did, But here I am in the middle of the street, though. Okay, I'm not protecting my lawn. I'm here trying to deal with 6 guys coming at me to do something to me, of course, right? And so here I am walking backwards. I pull out my 2-inch snub-nosed .38 revolver, and I yell at the top of my lungs, "Policía, te voy a disparar. I'm going to shoot you." And the leader of them looked at me crazy like, and he said, "Mátame, kill me, okay, kill me." And the guy kept on coming at me. Later on, I found out that these were Salvadorian gangster MS individuals who weren't afraid of, us Americans because they had witnessed many killings going on in their homeland. They had come over here, and these guys were part of that syndicate of immigrants that had come down and were trying to recoup from their own PTSD that they had that was happening and going on at the time. And so what we have here now is the situation where they're here and they're trying to make money the only way that they can. And so that day when I faced off with them, I was 25 years old. I was a dumb young cop. And basically, I had the perfect life. I was married. I was supposed to go to a wedding that day, do family stuff. My kids hadn't yet been born. But at that moment, as I had my gun pointed at them and they're looking at me and they're saying, "Kill me, kill me," this little old lady, I'll never forget it. She was kind of like in her 80s, driving a big old giant late 60s Buick. And basically this Buick, it stood out. It was like a boat. And she looks at me and she stops right there behind me and she says, "Young man, why don't you jump into the car? These guys are going to hurt you." And so, I told her, "No, ma'am, I'm a police officer. Please go call 911. And that was the last I heard of her. She just took off. I thought about it long afterwards. I was like, "Oh my God, was that an angel that just stopped there to watch a guy being, almost killed by these 6 gangsters, and I'm there in the middle of the street, also a Mexican." I mean, she didn't know who I was. I was in plain clothes, but just a beautiful story here of this. I don't know if it was an angel or what the heck this little old 80-year-old lady was doing in the middle of the street, telling me to get in her car while my gun was out. So as they're coming at me, I'm thinking to myself, shoot, this is it, man. It's going to happen, and I have my hand there. I don't want to shoot anybody, of course. And then all of a sudden, a car comes out of nowhere and runs my ass over, okay? And it turns out it wasn't a car that was affiliated with these guys. We thought it might have been, and I really, truly don't know because I was more focused on these guys than a car coming by and running me over. But that's what happened. I was in the middle of the street, and it would probably sound more glamorous to say, "Yeah, the gangbangers ran me over too." But I don't know, Okay, because I found myself later on thrown into the street, flying over the hood there, and basically I had landed in the street with my right ankle to my leg. It had been broken in half. I could feel the bone it crushed, and I was trying to move it. It would just like flop around, and I was in this most excruciating pain that you can imagine. So for me at that moment, just lying there and watching the world go by, me holding on to my gun at my side, watching these guys go back and vandalize my vehicle still. They broke out the windows, they broke out everything there, and they stole my badge. They stole one of my guns, a 9mm. They stole my uniform. They pretty much raped my ass. And for a second, I thought about cranking off around, at them, bah, 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 but I mean, and I wanted to do that because I couldn't move, and I was scared shitless, and they were laughing at me, and I wanted to crank around, but, I was like, fuck, I don't want to hit. I saw this little baby being held by this woman. She's kind of like watching this. It was like a show. A lot of
what it looks like
was just so excruciating that it was just out of this world. And so from there, my whole world came for me. It was 6 months after Rodney King, and Daryl Gates came out and said, see, we don't beat and shoot everybody. So I was kind of like the poster child there for a little while because I had not elected to use my weapon to take a life. To me, it didn't seem like common sense. I didn't see a weapon, and I don't want to be a coward. I mean, as it is, I didn't back down and jump into the little old lady's car. I probably should have. But, I did what I thought was right, and maybe I would have pulled the trigger. I don't know if I hadn't been hit. What I do know is that my life changed drastically, and they try to use my situation politically to say that we're not all killers. And I don't want to say that the police in general are killers, but for me, it was something that I had seen that changed my life, okay? And yes, there are police officers that are killers. I guess I better retract what I said, because there are officers who are, okay, extremely traumatized. And that's what happened to me, because when I went back to the police station, getting back to that part of the story, my partner started saying, why didn't you shoot the motherfuckers? Why didn't you kill them? Why'd you get involved? Don't you know we're not supposed to get involved? We're supposed to have blinders on. For me, it was about, hey, that could have been my mom. It could have been my sister. It could have been my wife. It could have been somebody. It could have been my little girl that was watching all this take place because there was a 6-year-old little girl. And for me, I was just trying to do my job. That was my duty. And so it didn't work out as pretty, me being a hero and them giving me all these awards and saying I was brave. I mean, that didn't mean anything. What happened to me was I became a very angry person shortly thereafter, and with 6 months away from the worst riots ever, in United States history, the LA riots came to pass on April 27th. I mean, this whole issue culminated down through the riots, and if that was enough, it goes even more sinister that I became an undercover detective, okay, where I could perhaps do the most harm going after people in this so-called war, this false war against drugs, okay, which I now see the light on that, and how we were trained and brainwashed to sweep up the so-called undesirables off the streets, the crackheads, the addicts, people who needed help, people who needed to be treated like human beings instead of crackheads or drug addicts or gangsters as society likes to cliche them, and so for me, I had a front row seat to this madness and dealing with my own PTSD and then becoming just like everyone else, or so it seemed, with a lot of my friends that I know had lost partners as a result of being LA cops, okay, who had been beaten up themselves, okay, and kicked, who had, just seen some really gnarly things that, as you were talking about, Steve, no one's ever prepared to see that stuff. What is the psychological impact what's the psychological impact of what goes into our minds,
Right.
and I understand, too, let's understand that regular people, like the listeners that are listening to right now, you don't have to be a cop to witness tragedy, okay? Because that is a source of just what life is, it is what it is, as they like to say, but,
Right.
we have to know how to deal with it. And when you have cops, police officers, law enforcement officers who are supposed to be, helping the public and not hurting the public, it becomes very, very sketchy, to say the least. And so for me, this is one thing that I've tried to work at to expose, and to discuss, this whole insidious culture of the code of silence. Okay, it's not something that comes out of the movies, although it is the theme of the movies, but it's a real life phenomenon. Okay,
Right.
and this problem is not just LAPD, or right now as we go through the infamous now LA sheriff scandal. I don't know if you heard about it over here, but the nation's most powerful sheriff is on trial. Okay, he was a 5-star sheriff for LA County. He wore 5 stars. He was the only one in the whole United States that was arrogant enough to do that, right? And so he got busted in trying to cover up for his deputies who assaulted or tried to assault an FBI agent by trying to intimidate her, with arresting her, and as they said, Baca doing everything but putting the handcuffs on her. What does that mean? Okay, I mean, that is just where people can think that because they have this power, they can literally fuck with you and ruin your life. And so I became one of those people at one point. I didn't start out that way, but, we cannot just blame the PTSD on the police officer going bad. It's also a subculture, okay? Because I had a father-in-law who brought me onto the job, who was a white officer, and he used to refer to black people as fun. You know what fun means?
No.
Fun means fucked up niggers, okay? And
Okay.
I don't like to use that word. Sometimes I use it kindling around with some friends. I used to get off on quoting Denzel Washington, my nigga. Because that's the way
Right.
these police officers were. It was just crazy, and I was part of that undercover crowd. That worked to protect Tupac and a lot of these guys. That were connected with death row. But that's another story there at another time, to discuss some real crazy insight into what was going on with the police department allowing all this, cocaine to be spread out, the Southland. I mean, this epidemic was created by white supremacy,
Right.
and so for me, these cops here that develop this PTSD, they're not able to come out and say, oh, guess what? I want to beat the shit out of my wife. I want to kick the dog. I want to assault and beat some, homosexual today, because I'm pissed off, or some. Yes, go ahead.
You're actually bringing me to a burning question that I have, and that is, like, I recall that you said that your police psychiatrist never told you had PTSD. You basically found it out on your own. And
Correct.
It seems to me that a lot of officers are experiencing this. And we talked before the interview started about not really putting your story out there in detail, but we wound up doing that. And I think it's a good thing we did, because people need to hear how absolutely crazy the experiences an officer can have, and maybe, hopefully put themselves in your shoes as you were telling that story and realize, like, wow, I mean, winding up with PTSD or depression or something is something that can definitely happen. But now we have these officers with this, and we've seen how easily that can happen in a moment. Why aren't they getting help? I know one answer a former sheriff's officer here told me was that he police are afraid that if they talk to the psychiatrist and say what they're really experiencing, that it might wind up, they're afraid it could be used against them down the road somehow. I know that's one thing, but I'm sure there's other reasons as well. Why aren't cops getting help? Why is support just not being provided, or are there, legitimate fears that stop them from seeking support, or what's going on with all of that?
Right. Well, the guy that you talked to, the police officer, he's definitely a real police officer because he gave the perfect answer. Yes, it will be used against them, that they are loose cannon. And at that point, once you come out and identify that you're having emotional or mental problems or what have you, you can be sent to what they call the rubber gun squad. Okay, I'm surprised you didn't mention you get to go to the rubber gun squad. What's the rubber gun squad? They take away your gun. Okay. And now you're labeled a psych. Everyone's wondering, hey, man, what's going on with Salazar here or Johnson or whoever, right?
Right.
And basically you're stigmatized. And if somebody doesn't like you and they begin asking, hey, your partners, what's he like, and you're out there getting a little bit crazy or whatever, and they say, well, yeah, he's having a hard time. He's going through a divorce or whatever. I mean, these are just small little things that come out that are kept hidden through the code of silence, where a lot of these police officers are simply told to resign, which is what happened to me. I probably should have been fired and maybe even jailed for some shit I did. Okay, let's be honest here. Okay, but because I had a badge and, I had a good reputation up until when I started having problems with my personal life. Okay, that's when everything really changed. And so at that point, I couldn't, just take it out on the citizens. I began taking it out on my old lady, my abusive nature, and dealing, with what would be, like I said, a mental illness, but that was tolerated because I had the badge to protect me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right, it does. It does. So you're actually telling me that this surprises me, because you would think in a culture where people are subjected to some pretty intense psychological stimuli, that in that culture people would have a more supportive attitude towards each other as far as mental illness, domestic troubles and stuff. And you're saying it's actually kind of the opposite, that if you you get stigmatized for that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really? Well, it's no secret that the cops consider themselves very macho, tough guys, that they can kick ass, take no names. That's the whole deal here, that if you can't handle it, get the fuck out of here. That's why there's so many cases of suicides, of police officers committing hara-kiri upon themselves, because they can't live with the shit that they've done to people and what's happened to their lives. Their wives leave them, their kids see them as assholes. I know this because my kids, are pissed at me for a lot of the things that I put them through, but I don't try to make any excuses for it anymore. There cannot be excuses, but there are reasons, okay? And the reasons are issues that we need to take a look at as being, societal problems for us in dealing with these problems here that, are being, brought out all over the place. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I am not trying to agitate people. I'm not trying to agitate the police, although it appears sometimes, that's exactly what I do. Ironically, right. I have family members that are cops, okay? Some of them very high-ranking police officers that are aware of my activism. And I have a sister even who came out during the Rampart scandal. And if you Google Sandra Salazar, LAPD, she's right there in the stories with Rafael Perez and David Mack, these guys that stole 8 kilos of cocaine, these guys that were the focus for the 2000 Academy Award-winning film Training Day, where Denzel won Best Actor, too, for his portrayal of the most dirtiest cop ever, a guy that I, happen to work with briefly named Rafael Perez. And so as we discuss this, it really is a labyrinth, a rabbit hole of things, where, you don't want to be sticking your head out here necessarily, but, many years later, oh gosh, Rampart, I left in 1998, during my little meltdown of what was happening in my personal life. But that was a really crazy year because that's when Rampart broke through. My dad had a heart attack, from what was happening with my sister and with me too, being Mr. Drama King. And of course, PTSD was behind all this, and this crazy subculture that fueled this movie, this whole thing about LA cops, who thought that their shit didn't stink. Well, here it was, their ass hanging for being one of the most corrupt, brainwashing organizations that there ever was, and I still say that to a certain degree because many of these people that are still there that I'm friends with, that are family members of mine, they know what is the truth. Okay. As they're listening to what I'm saying right now to you, you can bet that they will be listening to these words. They know what is the truth. Some of them are commanders of police stations. A guy who I worked with that was, one of the 44 officers who were laid out by the Christopher Commission for high rates of police brutality and abuse. The guy's now commander, and some of these guys are, like I said, very, very high on the totem pole. And generally speaking, they are good guys, but they have become inculcated with a mindset of superiority. Okay,
right,
and I became that way too, and I was being groomed actually to be one of these people because I had always achieved very high. I came from a good family, and basically I had all the support systems for me to succeed. However, when this incident happened to me in September of 1991, it changed my whole life from that very day, and I now became, one of numerous officers that are out there now, racist, acting, bigoted, abusive, asshole-like pig, to hurt people, okay? And so I'm not trying to be dramatic. What I am saying here is that I was that, okay? And I'm ashamed, to say this, and I don't look forward to talk about these things, but it's part of my DNA, my personality. Ironically, I'm going through some crazy things right now, but for me, this is life. I'm trying to help out people wherever I can. Some of these things are working out, like here with Tim, talking about positive issues here regarding police brutality, trying to solve these problems, to discuss these issues, to really destroy that demon, which tries to continue to silence what we already know, as we see everyday feeds where people are getting shot and beat. I've stopped looking at them, to be honest with you. I know that there's people that are addicted to looking at, but I've stopped looking at them. I as a private investigator, I handle these type of cases, and I've gotten very close to a lot of the family members that I consider as sisters, as family members, as men and mothers and things like that I have helped with their cases, but not to minimize anybody else's grief, but I cannot see this stuff anymore because it continues to have its effect. And with me, having once upon a time, become, so jaded here, Steve and Tim, that, I couldn't, really deal with the stress anymore. I really had become suicidal myself, because I had dealt with so many issues here and demons, but I had never actually thought about solving them. Okay. And trying to see if I could actually get help, because no one talked about PTSD. I didn't know what PTSD was. I just thought I was going crazy, acting all stupid, wanting to go out drinking and womanizing and beating the shit out of people, okay? It was normal. It was normal. That was my fucking reality, okay? And no one wants to talk about this shit. And when I started discussing it, they are like, well, no, man, I had one of my partners call me on Facebook a couple of years back. I closed my feed because there's just so much toxic behavior going on there on social media. I'm not on there anymore. I try to stay away. But my partner calls me out, Alex, why do you think, you're a saint now talking about police brutality? You used to do a lot of shit. And I thought about it because Tim had been a partner of mine. We had been partners. And so with that, I say that you're right, Tim. You know, I should probably be in the penitentiary with you for the crimes that we committed in humanity. You and I should both be Bubba's cellmates here for the things that we did. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And at that point, he came back. Hey, man, I was just fucking with you. What, what's going on? How you doing? And I was like, fuck you. You dumb motherfucker, trying to pull shit on me like that. But the point
Right.
here with me is I don't have a problem talking about this anymore. I used to be scared as motherfucking shit discussing police brutality and things like that because, some of these guys are nuts. But then again, there's a lot of police officers that are waking up and they're saying, damn, man, as they wear that uniform patrolling down that street, that fucking white Jones motherfucker who called me a nigger or who called these other people here fun people or whatever, I mean, he's part of the problem. Okay. And in a lot of police departments today, some of them, maybe some of this stuff doesn't happen if there is such an department that exists where you don't have racism. I would like to see that model department and to work with them and to have them be a model for some of these departments like Chicago, for God's sake, or New York or LA. I mean, they
Right.
really need to learn to humble themselves and to do with, progressiveness for the future. And we're seeing that happening too. We had a instance here, a couple months ago where a police chief in Georgia, in a small city, basically apologized to the people of that city for the numerous over 5,000 lynchings that had been committed in that part of the South in Georgia. Okay. This was in the aftermath of the Civil War, of course, where 5,000 people had been lynched. And no one had ever talked about it. You would have thought somebody would have said, hey, man, what about all these guys that got lynched? And of course, no one had discussed it or mentioned anything. But this guy did, this very progressive chief in Georgia who apologized to the people, and he apologized, I think it was to a official there. And basically there was atonement. I guess you're going to have a park with the names of many of these individuals who were lynched. But it's finally being dealt with. And it goes also in the same way of a good friend of mine by the name of Kevin Murphy. Kevin Murphy is a former chief of Montgomery City, Alabama. He is there, and if you know a little bit about Montgomery, that is what was known as the cradle of the Confederacy. It's where the first Confederate White House was, if you can believe that. We got the White House in Washington that we see all the time. Well, once upon a time, there used to be another White House, but it was the Confederacy. And that was there in that city there where this guy, Kevin Murphy, worked. When he became chief in 2010, he ordered removed from the badges the cradle of the Confederacy insignia, okay, off the badge. He had that crap removed, cradle of the Confederacy. He's like, we are not the Confederacy anymore, right? And then
Right.
in sometime in that probably in 2011, 2012, he made another daring move, and he started to make his officers go to the Rosa Parks Museum and basically to tour around the museum and to see, how some of these white people just really hated blacks and to kind of infiltrate the souls of these evil white spirits, okay, who still thought and looked at blacks as niggers, okay? And so, we need to address these issues here, and we need to make them happen, and that's exactly what Kevin continued to do when he apologized next to the famous John Lewis, who, walked with Dr. King across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, a bridge where I have been to, which I have crossed a couple years ago at the 50th anniversary of that infamous beating in 1966, the year that I was born, if that tells you anything about my age, right? And so, I mean, he apologized. And so that's what needs to happen here. There needs to be atonement. First of all, I mean, nothing is ever going to really do to help. And I can speak from the black mindset, I believe. Even though I'm not African American, I identify with my black brother and sister in solidarity, with understanding and empathizing with them on everything that they had suffered, being uprooted from their tribal lands of Africa, all to be used as animals and savages, But, I mean, really, this is what it's all about. It's acknowledging that racism, and when it comes to law enforcement, you now have institutional racism, which means it's allowed to happen. There is a system which is designed to incarcerate. There's a system of state-sanctioned murder. That means that they can kill you and get away with it. Okay, and if it hasn't been for this damn technology, you can bet that this crap would be happening. And of course, my ass would not be talking to you guys. Okay, I'd be like, get me the hell out of here. I'm not worried about that anymore. I am saying that I can live. I can now talk about this and still my peccadillos of the past and present. I'm not a perfect human being. I know that I myself still have issues very strongly with the PTSD. And that I get triggered a lot with what's going on here, particularly with this new administration, where they're talking about curtailing back on a lot of civil rights, and many of these police departments now are feeling extremely empowered. Yeah, we got that white motherfucker power guy, Donald Trump, on our side now. Heil Hitler. Okay, they're saying to him, Heil Donald. We're seeing this come out now, way out into the open, and we're having a hard time trying to contain all this. It's almost like a runaway train, where all this madness has now come into full force in the year 2017 with all this technology. I mean, look at us right now, all the people that are listening, and this conversation that's taking place over all this, modern gadgetry. I mean, it's a different time period where we can actually, raise more consciousness. But in order to do that, I see us as trying to have to unite more and not continue with the inside bickering and problems that are going on. And really that's where we're going to get, progress, is when we can all get on the same page, where they can work with the next pig like me and all my defects, and not looking at all the superfluous bullshit personal stuff or whatever people try to say, but to deal with the issues, okay? To deal with the issues. Anyone that I have worked with, even the crazy people that I have worked with, it has been because I believe that they all bring something to the table here, Steve and Tim. We have all experienced police brutality in our own little way, and many of us, we came into this, including you, Steve. You were telling me that, you used to think, oh, the police are our friends, right? And that was until they beat the shit out of you and framed you and made you look like you were an ass and a criminal, which of course you weren't. This was just somebody overusing and overstepping their boundaries. And how many people out there right now that are listening to me, and including some police officers themselves who have been targeted by fellow cops, okay? We know that happens a lot, where you got overzealous police officers who become little Nazis within the force, all military, like Tackleberry is what I look at, from the old Police Academy series. Remember Tackleberry?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, him, carrying 9 guns on his person and doing flips, reminiscent of that knucklehead in Texas who was out there pointing his guns and doing flips. Remember at the swimming pool last year?
Yeah, Super Cup.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's just, something that's going to continue on, I believe, if we don't look at this and get real. I see that there will also be more police killings as people are starting to feel like, shit, no one's listening. I have to martyr myself. I have to sacrifice myself. We talk about these extremists, these terrorists that are extremists, we don't have to worry about them. We got them here in our own backyard. People are becoming radicalized here in the United States. And whether they love Obama, hate Obama, love Trump, or hate Trump, the nation is very extremely polarized and sharply divided. I was hoping that, Trump would just kind of wake up and say, hey, man, I was just kidding about this. We're going to bring back world peace and dismantle everybody. And,
it's a nice thought, isn't it?
It wouldn't be a nice thought, that's what I was thinking, kumbaya and let's save this world. But it seems like this world is headed for self-destruction. I'm just here, a little fly on the wall in history, just as everyone else who is listening here. We all have a short life. We're all going to die at some time. We got to think about that. And we have to think about what did we do to contribute to help out the people who are being killed. Are we there trying to make a name for ourselves, or are we really trying to put in the work to talk about really what is the problem that exists out there in the world, and not just even here in the United States. I mean, because this is a worldwide problem. The United States should be the leader, working perhaps even with Russia, I would say, to try to, and China, to try to deal with many of these global issues that are going on that just doesn't threaten, other parts of the country, but also the United States of America. The United States of America is about to step into a major internal conflict within itself. We're looking at a repeat, quite possibly, of the Civil War, which will initiate with rioting and fighting, nationally all over the place of a very high massive level. Okay, and that's not me trying to act like a fortune teller. It's just what's going to happen. The writing is already on the wall. People are tired of this shit. So there's nothing to say, one day, oh, Alex Salazar said this. No, anybody can see this. That has an understanding of humanity and who cares about the people that don't have as much, and individuals, like the president here, who could use this power that he now has. I mean, he's done it all. I mean, the Trump name and everything, but no, instead he wants to make himself God Almighty, which he is now apparently to some people. But, for us, the common man, the person that's just trying to make a buck and to do our best, we need to fight. Okay. Well, and go ahead.
We definitely do. I like everything you said there. I agree with a lot of that. I mean, things are really getting out of control, and it's I guess it's part of why I wanted to do the particular episode I'm doing with you, because I'm hoping to we definitely need to push hard for reform. We definitely need to push hard for accountability. But at the same time, I'd kind of like it if we could have a little, dialogue where we show some understanding, and maybe, hopefully, as a result, get some understanding back from the other side, and get people talking to each other instead of yelling at each other. It's a ambitious idea, and it may be batshit crazy, but I'm hoping it'll happen. Yeah, I mean, I agree on all those points. I want to go back to the whole thing about the culture of where people with mental issues from the job get stigmatized. I'm horrified. I'm absolutely horrified that somebody could have this idea that they want to go and out and protect society and help society, and then they might get in there and they might have some really twisted up experiences in the process of doing their job, find themselves in destructive behavior, find their family falling apart and this sort of thing, and they're completely on their own. They're not getting help from the citizenry because we're completely unaware of this. They're not getting help within their own culture because it's so macho. And I mean, that is so awful. I guess what a question I would have is, based on your observations, is there anything we civilians and activists can do, any pressure we can apply to try to crack that nut, to try to get support for officers? I mean, a lot of it's going to have to come from within their own culture, but is there anything we can do to help from the outside?
Yes, there is. There's always ways that we can help if we can get out of that denial stage or what have you. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that can be done there. And one of the things that you can do is you can support police officers that are whistleblowers. These are brave men and women from all various spectrums of government service, who, because they are good people, because they are righteous human beings seeking justice, they have not become jaded by the system. They can still see, hey, this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong. But so many times police officers and those guys that are listening right now, they know you got to go with the program. Okay, if you don't go with the program, you're a fucking problem now. And you need to be dealt with and eliminated, and they're going to talk and they're going to railroad you, and depending upon the severity, they can come at you very, very, very fiercely. That's exactly what happened with the guy out here named Christopher Dorner, who went out and killed cops, actually several, and family members of some of them, to send a message that they weren't going to destroy his life and just fuck with him. which is what unfortunately they did, and there was those repercussions. And then you have the situation that goes way back to the early 70s, the Knapp Commission, a guy by the name of Frank Serpico, who became immortalized by Al Pacino's portrayal of him. Serpico was a guy who in the early 70s, 1971, I believe, came forth against the vast amount of graft and corruption that was going on. Graft, as you know, is people on the take, getting paid for prostitution, for bookies, for narcotics. I mean, they had rackets of all kinds going on. And so the police officer there didn't really go there to be a cop. He went because he was going to get paid, as they say, to make some real money doing some dirty shit. And Serpico saw that right up front, but yet to everyone, it was kind of like the elephant in the room or the emperor with new clothes, where, you know, everyone could see the obvious, but yet no one said anything. And if you go back to the movie Spotlight 2 years ago, One Best Picture, it was about pedophile priests, you know, that started out only with the Archdiocese of Boston, right there, where all these priests were molesting kids. And that was just in that diocese. And that little expose led to the fact that there weren't just priests there in that diocese, but all over the country, all over the world. And so this problem here, it's systemic. It's nothing new under the sun. What we are doing, though, what is new under the sun is that we have all this technology and more people can be awakened and liberated to see that this isn't just a isolated problem. Because typically speaking, the police departments like to say, or they like to have you believe, oh, this is an isolated problem. This is a bad cop who, you know, it's a couple of rotten bad apples. You know, they come from the human race, and so
right, the bad apple nonsense.
Yeah, the bad apple nonsense. You know, but it's not the bad apple nonsense. What it is you have a subculture of brainwashing of Nazi superiority that is passed down to officers of all races. I mean, it's not just the black that's an Uncle Tom. You got Hispanics like me thinking that they become white also. Okay, and it's an utter joke for what's going on there. You know, and so for me, you know, I just try to be as real as I can. Again, I don't want to piss people off. I understand that, you know, some people are probably pissed off saying, well, I disagree with that. And someone's saying, yep, he's right. Yep, he's right. You know, because, you know, the truth is the truth. I don't care if you're a criminal or if you're the fucking Pope. Okay, the truth is the truth, and you can't get away from that. And so what I experienced was my experience there. It just so happened that I was a rookie at one of the most infamous police stations ever, immortalized with, you know, Denzel's, you know, portrayal of a partner that I once used to work with that, you know, was also the subject of PTSD. A lot of people don't know that Rafael Perez and his partner David Mack had a gun pointed to Rafael's head, okay, Rafael Perez's head. They were doing a drug deal for PCP, phencyclidine, a very dangerous drug, right? And the dealer came out with the dope and was in the process of selling it, and then he puts a gun to Perez's head and says he's going to kill him, right? And so at that moment, you know, he turns and looks to Mac, and then Mac takes his gun out. Perez didn't see it, and he shoots and kills the guy as he has the gun to Rafael Perez's head. Rafael later told us in a training day, our own little training day, where several NARC groups came together to train and practice undercover techniques. He discussed that shooting and how he thought that was the bullet going through his head instead of the chest of the bad guy high on the sherm, you know, and so, I mean, right. it was, you know, so why did these guys start robbing banks and doing crazy shit like that? Why did Rafael Perez start planning shit on people? He didn't have to do any of that. He became crazy because I believe this incident, okay?
Well, definitely he would, because one thing I learned about PTSD is you know, because I suffer from that, and one thing I learned, one of my therapists told me, if you're in a traumatic situation, you can catch PTSD. But if you're in a traumatic situation where you accept that you are going to die, like you decide you're going to die and you accept it and come to terms with that idea, like at that moment, your brain completely resets itself in a moment. In the snap of a finger, your brain rewires itself So
that's what I've always said, Steve. I use the analogy of, do you remember that commercial? This is your brain on drugs. Do you remember that one where they
right.
show the whole egg? Okay, this is your brain, and then in a second, the egg starts to fry and they scramble it. Okay, well, I use that's someone with PTSD now. Okay, their brain is scrambled, and it's all over the place, and that's been something that I've had to deal with ever since then. Since that day, being kind of scatterbrained and I suppose edgy. But it's my way of surviving now that I'm, like a crackpot, as they say, with trying to deal with who I am. But I have found the best way of dealing with everything, my bad choices of everything, is just saying shit as it is. Because, you're only as sick as your secrets, I believe. There can't be any shame in my game here because, the truth always comes out. That's just the way it is in today's modern world. I feel sorry for kids growing up. Big brother is literally up your behind with whatever it is they want to get on you. I mean, this is very, very dangerous, this whole 1984 time period where people are just losing their minds as we speak. Bombings happening all over the world, and so much divisiveness with war, and us dealing with this issue of what we're discussing right now. How do good cops become bad cops? I believe as human beings we're all inherently good, and that we want to be good, but that because of life's traumas, life's events that happen, these weird subcultures that we as human beings belong to, whether it's a new age religion or something more traditional like Islam and Judaism and Catholicism, Buddhism. I mean, there's all these different ideologies, which we always hope that it's going to shape society to become better, but instead, this whole issue with hypocrisy, okay, because supposedly we're supposed to be about peace, but this peace thing has gone out the window. We are headed to a one way fucking ticket to hell, pretty much. What was that group that said, I'm on the highway to hell? Anyhow, yeah, it's crazy. It's
right.
crazy, and for me, I try not to take it serious. That's why I kind of try to make light of the situation, because if I start thinking about, God damn, we're all gonna die miserable people. God gave up on humanity, and maybe there never was a creator or anything like that. I mean, it makes for a world where there's no hope for peace, much less anything else, but I'm just here a little, fly on the wall, trying to give my little 2 minutes here to discuss this subject matter, which has polarized, societies all over this country and the world when it comes to dealing with law enforcement. We really need to look at ourselves, and as you said earlier on, Steve, we're living in modern times here, okay? You would think that, with everything that has happened, we would get beyond this, but, there's still this long trail to go, I believe, that we have to cross. When that's going to happen, I don't know. Certainly, the groups out there like Black Lives Matter and many other unique, entities of people who've coalesced together can finally get on the same page. Really, that's what I'm hoping for. Our friends at Anonymous, too, who are there in the background watching and not looking for any accolades. But, the common, citizen who believes
right.
that, something needs to be done. I applaud you, whoever you are and wherever you might be. And so, I don't know. I don't know if this has answered your questions. I know I'm kind of long-winded here, but please forgive me.
It's quite all right. I guess you just touched on something else I was going to ask about. So we've got this thing where a cop can have PTSD, and I mean, having PTSD myself, I know how it just messes you the hell up. So there's that whole thing. But we hear a lot that a police officer's job is rough, and it seems to me like it could be a real grind. And you mentioned something about like just as you're looking around, trying to keep your faith in humanity and stay positive and stay proactive. As an officer, how hard was it for you to go out and see some of the things you saw, and also sometimes see criminals escape justice? How hard was it for you to go out and see that and maintain your sense of optimism, your sense of hope, your sense of wanting to make things better and feeling like you could? Or like even before you got your PTSD, were you fighting with that a lot? Was that something that was trying to grind you down? Not saying it succeeded or...
Well, most definitely so. The PTSD that I got from my incident was profound. It's still very profound. I believe that it also gives me a lot of strength to do the work that I'm doing now in discussing this subject matter, because there was a lot of shame and trepidation with me coming forward initially, because I would get ridiculed. And yes, I was ridiculed for several years there, and just saying, shut up, you were just a bad cop, or shut up, you don't need to be talking about this anymore. But the facts were there that my sister had become involved in one of the biggest scandals ever in LAPD history. I couldn't get away from that. I couldn't get away from the fact that I had family members that were in very high-ranking positions within the department, or that one of my best friends was a hero in the North Hollywood shootout, 1997, where these officers got shot by these two guys going in with AK-47s and robbing a Bank of America, And then there was also my history too in starting to do a lot of these cases of police brutality, So for me, it's been really, really difficult in trying to come forward initially to discuss this subject matter, because there's just a lot of lurid shit that goes on. A lot of sex parties and addictions within law enforcement. I struggle with that too, and being with that culture where, because we were in uniforms, or just because we had all that testosterone from chasing the radio, 24/7 or so, it seemed. As soon as we got in, we might be given a homicide call. We might be giving a drive-by shooting call, where someone's guts were protruding out, or some baby who had come out of a window in a traffic accident decapitated. I mean, how do you handle those things? I remember getting really screwed up looking at just simply pictures of a child who had been sodomized during an investigation. This partner of mine said, "Hey, check this out, man." And it was a kid who'd been sodomized. It was just really, really bad in me trying to process it and not say, well, I didn't see that child who'd been, sodomized or anything like that. I couldn't say that. Okay. I couldn't feel that, because then I took it personally, and I would, start to develop perhaps, I don't know, maybe some crazy, ideas in molesting my kids. Who knows, where the mind can go. Okay. Right. What I do know is that my mind became very, very twisted. And I was shamed initially for talking about how I had become and my awakening process. When I began to talk about PTSD to family members, telling them that, hey, guess what, man? The reason I became crazy was because I have PTSD. And they came back and said, oh, you were already crazy, just making fun of me. And I had to laugh at it, of course, because it was funny. But really, for me, it was a moment in time where the lights turned on, okay? And I was now able to see the light, as they say, and to deal with this issue, and so for me, it's still a process. I think, I think humanity, that societies today, we're learning a lot about ourselves, but what we still haven't gotten to, I believe, is that place where there's forgiveness within oneself for many of the atrocities that have been committed through life. As we speak, there's listeners that are listening who've been victims of police brutality. Maybe we have police officers who were victims of getting bullied at an early age, and maybe they want to become a police officer after that so that they could bully. I don't know, okay? And really, I don't care either in the sense that, I want to know about people's individual problems. What I do care about is that this is a societal issue, okay? This is a societal
Right.
issue which has always existed, and that we now need to get a grip on, because if we don't, we are certain to destroy ourselves in a really, really bad, ugly way. I want to believe that there's hope for humanity, that good cops, that become bad cops can maybe once again see the light. I know that's what happened to me. There's officers that I work with out there that are very humble. One of them, is out there in Samson Costales. Google him, Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's a guy that came forth, and broke the code of silence. And he's a very real man, in discussing how he too was part of the problem, And so if we can have police officers come out and say, yeah, I did these things, but I wasn't in my right state of mind. Maybe I need to be pensioned off or whatever. And hopefully it'll be a police officer who's not just looking for a ticket or anything like that. Certainly me, when I got attacked, I didn't want to say that, I can't be a police officer anymore. I wanted to continue serving. My problem was I didn't know just how severely mentally injured I was. And so now knowing that, I can provide this insight, and I do when I get calls from all over the country and even the world, asking about, the work that I've been doing, the research that I've been involved with for many, many years in discussing this subject matter way before, hands up, don't shoot, or I can't breathe were around. I was talking about this with many others trying to reach out, but it appears that the system is out there to suppress us, to keep us down so that the public can't hear these massive tales, which many of them are now like, well, yeah, we know this now, okay? And of course, people are very cynical in the way like, well, what are we going to do about it? You can't do nothing about it. This is the way it is, and we can do things about it, if we just stop for a second to think about how much we could accomplish if we wouldn't fight among ourselves. And so, I hope that, this kind of helps you out here with whoever's listening, and to the police, the cops, the feds, whoever's out there, you guys know the truth too. Focusing on a show like this or on me because you think that we're trying to overthrow the system is not the way. Rather, what we're trying to talk about is real life subject matter here, where, whoever it is that's working underneath the president, let's say right here with Trump, can try to see that a lot of these instances here where white cops and even Hispanics or blacks are shooting minorities, it is a case of white supremacy. And that, my friend, is the driving force behind all that. That there really is an evil sense out there when you get somebody like, Jeff Sessions, why say the head of the KKK? Okay, because there's no way he could have gotten to where he's at running that place if he was not somehow affiliated with that, okay?
Because the Klan's presence is so insidious there.
Exactly. That's what it's all about there. That's what I'm talking about. It's the Klan's presence and the grace of white supremacy. Now these people who've been hiding their true feelings for many years have come back, and it places us all in a very, very precarious situation where, now you have sociopaths and known people who hate black people in charge of us. That is the crazy part.
Right, and that's a thing. The FBI has released 2 reports now where they have been warning that white supremacists have been infiltrating law enforcement. Like there is a targeted, like in concert effort by white supremacists to infiltrate law enforcement. And I want to get more into the pervasive influence of white supremacy on law enforcement and how that contributes to bad cops. But Tim has a question here, and I want him to be able to ask that. And I also have one myself. But Tim, you first. What did you want to ask?
I just wanted to ask, because I noticed, like, you guys focus pretty much primarily on PTSD, and I think a lot of people will use that as a cop-out. You know, like, oh, those poor cops, they're mentally ill, they've been through so much. So first, I just really wanted to point out that most cops don't get shot and don't get brutalized. They're out there statistics show they're out there doing the shootings and brutalization of people. And statistics also show that most cops die in car crashes. That's
Right.
the number one way. So the question I guess I'm asking is, because like if you look at Standing Rock or protests, the cops will be whooping somebody silly, and the other cops will all chime in or stand around so they can't be filmed while committing crimes. So I'm saying, other than PTSD, like, first question, I guess part of the question is, what percentage does PTSD actually play, in your opinion, on these cops being so evil and bad? And the second question, second part of the question would be, I mean, are these other things like bullies and psychopaths, or the fact they have too much power, racism, a lot of them are on steroids or other drugs or have anger problems, or even just peer pressure? Like, what do you think, compared to PTSD, how do those pan out? I guess would be
Yes,
my
thank you
question.
for asking that, Tim. I was going to be headed there, and you got us there. Thank you.
Okay, shall I answer now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the statistic provided by my friend Alan Cates, who wrote the book Cop Shock, is 1 in 3 police officers will suffer from PTSD during the course of their career. That's a third, basically, of police officers. I personally think it's much higher than that now. When he wrote the book in 1998, 99, after 5 years of research, he's updated it. I don't know if that statistic has changed. 1 in 3 cops. Okay. Your second question, Tim, with respect to it being a cop out. It is a cop out. Okay. First of all, let me just say that. But it is a reason too. Okay. We know that this police officer, like myself, okay, we'll say me for example, was injured, yet still I was allowed to go back on the job and to go out and abuse people, including my personal life, to be a jerk. And so, we don't really get to the root of the problem because there's a shame, there's a stigma, of police, being abusers and them having issues with tempers and them not getting treated. And that right there perhaps lies a tragedy that, as Steve said here earlier before the show, that he wanted to delve into, why doesn't anyone talk about this, okay? Why aren't we having these discussions? And really, it's because there's a lot of shame and embarrassment. The cop needs to present a perfect profile to the neighbors, to the family, but deep down inside, he's an alcoholic. He's an abusive jerk. He goes out and hits people, and then when he comes home and on weekends, he has a barbecue and does the family thing, but has the kids all depressed and the wife giving a pretty face, trying to look like nothing's going wrong. Okay, and so having PTSD, it's not an excuse. Okay, but it is a reason for much of this behavior. And then when you mix this up with this white supremacy crap and subculture of being a cop, macho attitude, kick ass, take no names, better be tried by 12 than be carried by 6 ethos, then that's when it becomes a problem. When you have these guys that, hey man, I bleed for the brother in blue, and I won't ever break the code of silence or be a snitch or rat because those guys are bad guys and we're the good guys. That is the caveman mentality that is out there that we need to fight, because most definitely we know that it exists.
So
I was going to
that would
actually
be.
ask
Oh,
about
sorry. Go
that.
ahead.
So thank you for bringing that up, Alex. I was going to
What's
actually
that?
ask about that tribalism within police culture. The whole thin blue line, and
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like a bunch of damn sharks, okay, that they feed off of fear. And they love to intimidate you. And the people who are listening, and even the ones that are police officers listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. When you get a high, or as my friend Cheryl Dorsey says, drunken with power. Okay, drunken with power. It means that, I'm the police and I can kick your ass and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. Okay? That's what we're talking about, this tribalism crap where they'll back each other up, and then the second they're on the stand, they're rolling over each other. No, he made me do it, and then they start squealing like the fucking pigs that they are, and so we need to deal with this on a much real basis. The problem is these guys are not able to talk because fear controls them. They know that they've done a lot of bad things. For example, my ex-partner, who's now, a commander, okay, that was on a list of 44 most abusive officers in LAPD, okay, and now he's out there doing all this community shit, and hugging and saying the police are our friends, but where was he, 20-something years ago, what was he doing? Okay, well, I know what he was doing. I'm not out here to out anybody, okay? So if they're listening, hey, guess what, man? He was talking about such and such. That's not what I'm about. What I'm about is we need to stop lying, okay? And be real with what has been going on for the longest. And somewhere there needs to be atonement. I mean, I don't think it serves any purpose other than maybe there was a police officer that lied and maybe he wants to come clean. I don't know. Help get that person that was wrongfully convicted, that spent 20, 30 years. I mean, I have a case right now that's coming out like that, that I did an investigation on. I cannot for a second imagine being incarcerated for that time period to be, what do you call it, locked up for a crime I didn't do. I can't even think beyond that crazy thought that, I had my liberty, my life taken away from me in an instant because someone was drunken with power. And so if anything else, the system is becoming what I believe to be unraveled. It's kind of ugly because we see now that the system was made entirely as it was meant to be, and that is to screw over people of color. And until we see that and we can unify and get people to support police officers who want to come forth and break the code of silence, that will have some sort of backup, then we're never going to get beyond anywhere, because these whistleblowers will always be threatened. I don't like to call them whistleblowers. I like to call them truth exposers, okay? Because these are the people that really want to be good cops, that really want to help. If they didn't come on board to be part of some kind of crazy conspiracy hiding shit. We've seen how this happened with Iran-Contra, with Ollie North being taken down for lying for the federal government and, lying for President Reagan and, this whole weapons of mass destruction lies. I mean, they've all come unraveled, and we can see, that we are now in the age of this, and this is stupid because I'm 51 years old, of fake news, where, I'm like, really? This was all fake news? So I try again not to take this so serious because, we're all stressed out here, from doing what we do and fighting and, for the people and fighting for justice and dealing with these, activists that are out there trying to tarnish reputations instead of helping, they're attacking. And so, for me, I'm here to work with other people. If anyone's listening, I'm here to work with the federal government. And some people might be like, what's he talking about? Talking to the feds? It's a snitch, right? No, we need to talk to these police departments and these governmental agencies that they can't be doing this shit anymore. And they need to listen to us, because the system creates an activist who goes off and decides that they want to kill police officers, or that they want to attack their police officers, or that they want to have a fuck you in their face, okay, because, they want to act like they've never done these things. Come on, give me a break. They need to understand that they created these problems. So much of this black-on-black crime has been perpetuated by the police, okay? What we did in LAPD back in the day is we would take rival gangbangers and drop them off in rival neighborhoods, and they would get killed. They would get shot. They would get beaten up, okay? And then guess what the other gang would do? They would retaliate. Is it any secret that would happen? That they would mess with these little 15, 16-year-olds' heads, whispering, hey, man, sniper's boning your girlfriend, Letty, and, basically causing more shit and more problems. So this is mental illness at its worst, okay? If we look back at the Kelly Thomas situation out in Orange County, where Officer Emmanuel Ramos said, hey, to a schizophrenic homeless man, hey, buddy, these fists are going to fuck you up. Who the hell tells that to a schizophrenic homeless man? These fists are going to fuck you up. And not only did they fuck him up, it took his life from him. And sadly, those officers weren't convicted, because you have a state that of people and citizens who are racist, who believed maybe he deserved to get his ass kicked and die. Okay, even though this was a scrawny 135-pound white male and there was two strong, big officers, one of them, ironically, who had PTSD, had left the LAPD after being shot in the eye by an AK-47 round or something, and he was there, now being a cop in Fullerton. All right? I don't know if you know that story there, Tim, yourself being out here. Were you aware of that officer Sicanelli from LAPD who had been involved in a shooting that almost took his life, and then he became a cop in Fullerton?
No.
Were you aware of that?
No.
Mm-hmm. So this is what we're dealing with here. I'm sorry. And hopefully we will one day be able to get past all the pointing of fingers and just dealing with these issues as they are without getting personal, without slandering people, and without being petty, so that we can make, this world a better place, I mean, that's just my little take here. I don't mean to come off negative to anyone, even the cops that are listening, or to the people here who might hate the police or might be, suspicious of what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is, yes, I was a good cop that became a bad police officer, and this is my story. This is what I went through. This is what happened to me. There's no excuse for me going out there and hurting people, Tim, for kicking their ass and looking the other way if one of my partners was framing them. I wasn't into framing people. I enjoyed beating people, that got crazy with me. It just triggered my PTSD. Remember talking about hypervigilance now. I had gotten the shit beat out of me by 6 hardcore gangsters and left for dead in the middle of downtown LA, and now it was payback time for me, okay? That's what this was all about here for me. I just wanted to fight, and prove, that I could kick some ass too, or that it was never going to happen to me again, like it did back in 91. So hopefully this has helped a little bit here for whoever's listened. And again, I have the website, renegadepopo.com, and then you can also check out honestpolice.org. Both of these are websites still in the making, constantly working on it, but it has some basic information on me, on the mindset of law enforcement, how I became kind of bad. There's just so much there. Sexual addiction within law enforcement, unfortunately, it's not just in law enforcement. That's a problem everywhere, societal-wide, so much damn porn out there and everything. It's really, destroying, our societies, okay? So, I mean, there's so many issues there that we need to discuss on a healthy basis, like how you and Steve have brought this out here. So, again, I'm very, very happy to be on this show.
Yeah, let me just clarify something real quick, Alex. No, I wasn't talking about people like you with the PTSD, because something actually happened to you. But like you said, there's 1/3 and 2/3. So I was kind of more saying the other 2/3, like what's their excuse and what brings them there and all that. That was what I meant. I wasn't trying to knock you for what went on with you, but I was just saying that's more the minority of police deal with that than the majority. But anyway,
what are these other causes?
Yeah, I mean, that is really just so subjective because, I mean, you can look at and arrive at one incident, and maybe you arrive at that one incident, and it's a baby whose body has been cut in half or something crazy, okay? And there have been cases out there like that. How are you ever going to be fucking normal from that shit? How are you going to sleep every damn night? And maybe there is nothing physically on the outside, Tim, Steve, that shows, no, that this guy's fine. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, one day, the demon happens to him or her, depending on what might happen to them. And maybe they start abusing a child. Maybe they become angry. They start drinking. Maybe they become a sex addict or gamble or whatever. I don't know. Whatever is the vice for that particular individual. You don't ever know what's going to happen to your mind. And the police officers that are listening right now, I'm sure they can identify with that. Some of them perhaps having seen some pretty gruesome things, and they're like, yep, I've seen some bad stuff. And again, it's not something that we hope as police officers that we're going to see. What we hope is, for going in, a lot of people who do become officers, they want to help save the world. I really, truly did feel that way, as stupid as it might seem. I wanted to help people who were getting hurt and robbed. Little did I know that I would become, the criminal and the troublemaker and the problem causer And so the big thing here is having platforms like for me to discuss what went on with my crazy ass many moons ago, and hopefully to have other police officers come out and say, yes, it's true, yes, it's true, yes, it's true, yes, it's true, instead of trying to dig in like they did with these priests, across the country. We now know that it was an epidemic of priests that were molesting little boys and children. And so, what's the problem here now with looking at the cops? I mean, if the priest could go this far, what about the police,
Right. There's I'm with you on that. I'm a question I have that Tim asked it. What about steroids? I know I've seen hints that there is a lot of pressure to be very physically strong because it could mean life or death for you, and it also makes you more able to do your job. Is there an abuse of steroids and supplements going on that isn't being talked about? Like, is that a thing?
Most definitely, there is, and that was going on for a very, very long time. Back in the days when I was in Rampart, I'd see these guys working out, and they were just ripped. Okay, some of them looked like bodybuilders. Their arms bulging, coming out of their sleeves. It was just incredible. I never touched any kind of bodybuilding enhancement. Just because I wasn't into that, I was just a regular guy. But for some of these guys, they had departmental weightlifting contests, and there were the rumors, of course, as he said, of that going on. And so what we now know is that steroids have always been very popular within law enforcement. It is something there, where it's another subject matter that's not really discussed quite a bit. Many police departments do not test specifically for steroids. They just don't, because, they probably lose the whole damn police department force or something if that were to occur. So, I mean, yes, it's very, very prevalent.
Okay. And Tim also did mention, like when you were looking at like what was going on with no DAPL. The girl who got her arm blown off by the grenade, she said the cop looked right at her and smiled and then shot her with the grenade launcher. And there was a lot of, you had such an incredibly large gathering of officers. It's, it's safe to say they weren't all suffering from PTSD, but they were all doing this really horrible shit to people. And it just kind of, it got really carried away. Any reasonable person would say it got very carried away, and the stuff they were doing was just shocking. And I guess it seems to me that some of those who would come in had to have been bad from the start. My encounter with police brutality, a total textbook psychopath. How are these cops who are already bad, just from your observation? Now, you weren't bad when you went in, you became bad, but I'm sure you saw bad cops, bad people getting into the police force. How are they getting around the assessments and the red flags that they should be putting up? I mean, are there even assessments for this? What's going on with that? How are psychopaths and really bad people getting in there?
Well, unfortunately, I have to agree with the one assessment that they have to pick from the human race, as they love to say that. Unfortunately, we have to pick from the human race, and we get a couple of bad apples out of that cliche that you mentioned earlier, right? But realistically, there's a couple of issues that kind of happen with trying to select the best. And that is, of course, them going through a battery of tests, psychological exam, the background exam, a polygraph exam, for some jurisdictions, and trying to go in and trying to measure the character of the individual. And if you're a person that for the most part hasn't had any arrests and is somewhat well-to-do and you did your job, yet you had a secret world where you had an abusive dad, and maybe that would come out later on through an MMPI exam, the Minnesota Multi-Personality Inventory Test, which is, kind of the standard test to see if you have a sociopathic personality. And unfortunately, again, people get away with it every single day. And in many cases, they're allowed to expedite through the system because, you have, kind of some cronyism going on. Oh, this is the future son-in-law of this officer, or, his daddy's a sergeant on the job, or they got someone there. And so they're able to cross lines and get in and use that good old boy system. But really, I don't think it's so much that. What I have seen, from me going in there, is there's this subculture here where they can take a good cop, have them go through the academy, and when they come out, the supervisor or training officer will tell that police officer, you know what, forget about everything that you learned at the academy. This is how we do real police work, right? And so you have that kind of mentality that you inculcate that officer now on the streets that, now you're not supposed to be be nice to the people and to practice courtesy with them. You're supposed to get them out, get the fuck out of the car, asshole. I mean, that becomes kind of the double personality there, which later on becomes, who you are, cussing and talking bad and being abusive to the wife and kids, because that's how you've been told that you have to be on the job. And so no one really discusses this. Again, as you mentioned it earlier, Steve, that there's so many issues here pertaining to the mental well-being of law enforcement officers who, hopefully come on. I like to think that most people came on with good intentions, okay, really to help out, and that they are able to detect these bullies and what have you early on. But reality is that there is no special mechanism in place to keep these police officers from acting macho, or like what we used to do on LAPD after a shift. We go out and we get drunk, okay, and everybody's been cheating practically on their girlfriends or their wives, and this is just a very, very dysfunctional behavior. And so once you get into that, you start thinking you can do whatever the hell you want to do. You flash your badge as you get pulled over by a fellow police officer, highway patrolman or whatever, and that's the way it is. The badge takes care of the badge. And so we need to try to, like I said, bring these things out to the open, and to ultimately try to deal with them.
Okay. Well, I just suddenly had a brain fart. These happen to me from time to time. So as from what you can see, there are standards in place. They're just sometimes not enforced due to cronyism, like somebody's able to kind of like be put around the character assessments or whatever because their dad was in the business or something like that.
Absolutely. Case in point involves a relative of a former popular commander on LAPD. This guy was a new rookie cop, and I guess he was out somewhere in Orange County, and a black guy danced with his wife, and he called him a nigger and, tried to brandish his gun. Well, guess what? He was allowed to remain on the job. He should have been fired for using that language to begin with, and for brandishing his weapon like he was going to shoot the guy. So these are the problems that we're dealing with when it comes to cronyism. But this is extreme right here because this was, a very popular name in which, this officer was well regarded because his uncle was a former chief or something.
Okay. Now, I had a couple of other things that came up. Tim, you had another question, didn't you?
No, I did a two-parter.
You did a two-parter?
Yeah, I kind of had that's why I had that long question. Just so you know, we're at
Okay.
about an hour and 40 minutes into the show right now. So we're over
Okay.
our original time.
All right. So I'm gonna kind of try to go through some of these other, like as you were talking, some things came up for me to ask about. One is the idea of seeing criminals escape justice. This is like my thing that I just hate about the American criminal justice system. You know, like when I was framed and I was staring at 20 years in prison for stuff I didn't do, and I was sitting there in a holding area before court, and here were people who had committed multiple assaults, arson, this kind of stuff. And they were back in here because they always like somehow manage to, well, they know the system, first of all, they know how to use lawyers. And I, on the other hand, my circumstance, I was really lucky. A very high-powered lawyer found out what happened to me and was so outraged, he represented me pro bono. And if that hadn't happened, I would be in prison right now, and for crimes I didn't commit. But there is you do see criminals, not like people like average Joes like me. If we wind up in that system, we're screwed. We're just totally screwed. But criminals seem to, like, a lot of times, like hardened criminals seem to escape justice. Does that create and this in no way excuses behavior, but is there a sense of vigilantism that comes about because that happens?
Do you mean police officers retaliating because they're angry over someone getting off? Is that what you're saying?
That, and then do they start thinking, well, everybody's guilty of something, and if I don't punish this person, the system won't. I think this person might have done something wrong, so I'm gonna beat him up because otherwise he'll never be accountable. Does that kind of mentality happen?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. If anyone wants to Google this video that was made about 10 years ago, it was called "The Real Rampart," based upon the Rampart situation. I discussed this phenomenon where there would be police officers who would target certain people, gangbangers or whoever they wanted to, take out of the community, where they would be targeted and retaliated against for perceived crimes that they were committing. And many of these were drug dealers, because what would happen is you'd have the shot caller, the main shot caller, that would be the one directing the sales. And of course, he wouldn't have the gun, he wouldn't have the money or anything, but he was the one that was directing it, because he wasn't going to go to jail. He had the youngsters doing his dirty work, and we'd be like, look at this guy, and then he would start laughing and kind of like, getting over on you type of thing. And so, it was a game here, kind of a cat and mouse deal, to try to get these guys, because they were doing these things, and so a lot of them were targeted, and they'd be saying, "Oh, it's not mine. That's not my dope. That's not my dope," and they'd be laughing. "Yes, it is yours. You're going to jail." And so most certainly that was something that did happen, where if someone had it out for you, or again, you would become a victim of contempt of cop. One way or another. It could be in the shape of a ticket in the traffic stop. It could be, the officer dealing with a drug dealer on the streets. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Colors, okay, with Robert Duvall, Sean Penn, old movie with LAPD. Yeah, and so, you'd have these officers, especially way back before 1991. That's when, these officers were caught in Foothill Division beating Rodney King. Okay, they got away with it every single day before that, okay, where you could be killed, you could be framed, and we saw that was the case with Rafael Perez when he finally says, hey, guess what, man, I framed this guy. He got 23 years to life, was made a paraplegic, and nobody believed him.
Yeah, I'm wondering, does it start like does that sort of thing start with, you're frustrated and you know that guy's a criminal, so you go and you fuck him up, and then as you do it a little more and more, like people who may or may not be criminals, you assume they're criminals and you go fuck them up, and it just kind of escalates. Is that kind of thing happening?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it goes up a whole lot worse too, where you might have an officer that likes to beat people, intimidate people. I dealt with a certain officer who killed one of my clients, a 13-year-old boy up in Sonoma County, where this officer was known for his traffic stops for bringing out his gun on women. On motorists on the freeway. He would just scare the shit out of him, take his gun out, and just, I'm going to kill you if you don't do what I tell you to do. I mean, that's literally how he operated, bringing his gun out and scaring the shit out of people. But the worst part is when you have a police officer that becomes what they call a repeat shooter. That means that you have to just kill once or twice. He's now a serial killer. I knew one police officer, actually a couple of them, that were in the 8-person range. They had killed 8 people, okay, and they were very well known and respected.
Good Lord.
Gunfighters. Yeah, they walk around like, the rooster in the police station, with the gun on their side, and all the rookies would get out of the way, not to piss him off because he was a bad motherfucker. He killed people, and he wasn't really a bad motherfucker. He was a murderer, is what he was, if we want to look at it for what it is. And so, it was what was going on and with what I saw happening on a regular basis. I only probably got like about 5 minutes left on my phone just to let you know, because I've arrived at an appointment. But I don't know if you want to close me out here because I don't want to just be there leaving you guys hanging.
Steve?
Okay, I'm here. My Wi-Fi went dead for a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I didn't get to hear all of your answer, but the listeners will hear it, and that's what's important. I'll be listening to this, playing it back. So really, what you've got here is you've got a culture of machismo. And you have a foundation of racism. There's been, we've all kind of heard before how like law enforcement kind of evolved from the slave catchers back in the slavery days. So you have this machismo, you have this racism, you have mental illness that's like, it would affect any human being, some of this stuff. So you have mental illness, you have stigmatizing of mental illness, you have abuse of steroids and other substances that cause aggression, and you have the job grinding people down, and you have disillusionment. Like, this is some toxic shit here. This is like a very toxic culture, and I'm just sitting here going, like now, I mean, I knew there was some of this stuff, but like now I'm seeing this, and I'm just like, Jesus H. Christ, how the hell do we deal with this? And you mentioned supporting whistleblowers. Is there anything else you can think of? Like what? How can activists kind of target some of this stuff? So instead of just being out on the streets and saying we're mad because police officers are killing people, for the activists who want to like get into some of this stuff and tackle some of this stuff that enables police brutality and police misconduct, do you have any ideas? Where do we go? Where do we go with this?
Right. Well, what we need to do is I understand, first of all, for a lot of these family members, I always have to defer to them first as the family member who has lost a loved one to police brutality, or even if someone like yourself, Steve and Tim, I know you guys have probably, been, had your asses kicked or whatever. And so that this phenomenon exists, okay? And so what we're hoping for is the people who have not yet become a victim of police brutality for them to recognize that it is a problem and that they may one day become a victim of an overzealous, cop or Nazi who thinks that they can do whatever they want to. And again, we have these videos that are there that just depict this every day of these officers talking down to people and being disrespectful. And so what I would say to these people that are there, activists and people that are just generally interested, is for them to become part of some of these groups here and to go to the city council meetings, to go to these meetings where they're talking about police reform. I know it sounds stupid, but writing to your congressman, your representative, and just being involved and supporting when these functions come up to discuss this. And that's really the problem here, is you have a lot of apathy where people are just kind of, well, let that person go, or they're lazy or they got something else better going on. That's what we have to take, care of here is that we fight this apathy with, getting people who actually care about people, because, we really are a narcissistic society now. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that we're so just into ourselves, our selfies, and going off to some bar and, partying or drinking, and some people are like, well, that's their problem, that's not mine, but really it is our problem, because, if we have a society that hates its police, we have nothing. The great Sir Robert Peel, the father of modern law enforcement, wrote that the police are the people and the people are the police. And so we got to remember that. We got to go back to that because, like I said, so many of them, including myself, became brainwashed. We bought into all this, macho mentality. And even with the military, so many of these young men and women, they go into our nation's forces hoping that they're going to make a difference and to do good. But to do what? To go out there and fight for these rich people that are claiming weapons of mass destruction just to get oil, and then they're out there dying and giving their lives, for something that's a lie, dying for a lie. I can see if it was maybe the Nazis or some real evil, but what the hell would you do if the Russians came down here or the Chinese attacked? We would become insurgents because we'd be trying to defend our homeland, and it's very sad, that our government continues to train, our soldiers and our police in this superiority complex, under the, America, we are the greatest, okay? I mean, America is
hyper nationalism is a big problem right now.
Yes, it's terrible, and they're like, we can do no wrong, and it especially comes from all these, radical Christians that are hypocrites, because that's not what Jesus was about. Jesus was about loving and forgiveness, and these are like, let's send these motherfuckers to hell. I'm going to go out and kill them, and I'll let God sort them out. That type of thing, And so I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree with all of that. As far as confronting this, you kind of hit on something there as far as a solution. They're not talking about it. The departments aren't talking about it. The municipalities aren't talking about it. The city managers aren't talking about it.
Liability.
Showing up to these functions and bringing it up and making them look at it would be a good first step, I think.
Right. And they have been doing it. These meetings, I have been there at them, but a lot of times they become very extremely confrontational. You have the leaders being thrown out of some of these political meetings, whether it's with the police commission or the supervisors meetings, they get thrown out because they don't want to hear it. They know this stuff is going on, yet they don't want to act. It would be nice to see more people show up, perhaps in thousands, and get rid of some of these politicians that are nothing but lip service, who are getting, money from the police unions. Really, it's the police unions that control it because, they have that wealth of money to be able to dictate, who can be the next, council person, mayor, or whatever.
Right. So we'll do that. Hopefully activists will start showing up and bringing up these things that we talked about today and asking what police departments are doing to address those specific issues. Of course, Tim and I are a little less optimistic about elected officials and government officials actually listening to the people. We
Right.
don't have a lot of faith in that. I'm curious.
I don't either.
I'm curious if you have other ideas on ways that we from the outside can kind of challenge this toxic culture and support the good officers, not just by supporting the whistleblowers, but support good behavior as much as tear down bad behavior.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. What was the question in a nutshell?
Basically, I think maybe we might wind up just having another episode where we can talk about more of this stuff because there's just so much to talk about.
There is, and
I've taken up 2.5 hours of your time now.
Okay.
So let's just do that. So yes, let's look into having another episode. There's a lot that we talked about in here, and I would just like to thank you very much for coming in and doing this. And what you did, as a bad cop, the things you did, that's pretty heinous shit. And I realize you bear a lot of shame of it, but you also, I hope you realize, owning that shit, that's a hell of a lot of manning up. And you should be very proud of the fact that you're able to, own that shit, admit you did that shit, and seek to correct, that kind of stuff, and use your experiences to correct that kind of stuff. That's very stand up, and give yourself credit for that, please. And thank you again for doing this.
Most definitely, Steve, and thank you again, Tim. It was a great show here.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, you guys, you take care then.
All right, take care, Alex.
Okay. All right, bye.
Bye.